Hi there, I'm Sue Stockdale, and welcome to episode 147 of the Access to Inspiration podcast, where we bring you conversations with remarkable people whose stories challenge, motivate, and inspire us to think bigger and aim higher. My guest today is Zara Lachlan, a remarkable 21-year-old who took on the ultimate test of endurance, rowing solo across the Atlantic. In February of this year, she became the first woman to row solo and unsupported from mainland Europe to mainland South America, a distance of over 3,500 nautical miles, spending 97 days at sea. Her story is one of resilience, grit, and an unshakable belief in possibility. I'm sure you're going to enjoy what she has to say. And as always, you can read a transcription of this episode as you listen on our website over at accesstoinspiration.org. Welcome to the podcast, Zara. It's lovely to speak to you today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, I bet you're exhausted after spending the last 97 days or so at sea, rowing across an ocean. How does it feel to be back at university?
Oh, great. It's actually really nice to go back to normal training as well. I've just got back from the gym. So I actually just got back from doing a rowing session, which was good fun.
How does it compare doing it in a gym environment than being out in the actual ocean?
The ocean is much prettier. It's more to look at and warm and nice and sunny, whereas the gym is not any of those things.
Just as we reflect on that, before I get into hearing about this epic voyage that you undertook, one of the things, being alone out in an ocean with that close connection to nature for so many days, how did you adapt to that sense of noise coming back from being out in the ocean?
I haven't adapted very well yet. I didn't have any music for the last 57 days of my crossing because I broke this phone that I'm on now. And I didn't realise, but I started clicking my tongue and whistling and things like that just during the day. And I do it now that I'm back. And so I'll be around people. And if I'm not particularly engaged in the conversation, I'll be there just going... So, very rude of me, but hopefully that goes away soon as I actually realise I am around people.
It can make such a difference. So tell me then, what prompted this desire to row across an ocean?
Honestly, I thought it would be fun. And I had 2.5 months of intensive training. I did over 500 hours in my boat and then a lot of theory. And I went and I had a few things that I wasn't looking forward to doing when I was out there, but I absolutely enjoyed everything. And I'm really glad that I went, even though I didn't have a big reason to go or anything. It was just because I thought it would be fun, and it really was.
Now, I understand before you decided to take this decision to row across the ocean, you'd been in some sort of car accident, and I'm wondering whether that was part of the defining moment and reason to decide to do it.
I was in a car accident in April, 17th of April, and I got a brain injury from it. I'm completely recovered now, but it meant that I couldn't really make new memories and I didn't really know what was going on for a while. So I had to go home from university, which is why I'm back at university for second semester now. And I decided to do it after that. And I think it probably did impact in a lot bigger of a way than I realised at the time. It was a very impulsive decision because I couldn't really think very long about something without forgetting about what I was thinking about. But then after a couple of weeks, I started to get better. And then within a couple of months, I was pretty back to normal, but with the odd thing that slipped my mind. But I think it probably helped me go more than...
And sometimes it can be that when we have a potentially life-changing, it can cause us to reflect on what life's all about and what we want to do with our time. I also get a sense from reading your background that you've been quite a competitive youngster as well, racing BMX bikes and getting to the World Championships at under 15 years old. What caused you to want to race BMX?
My dad used to, when I was younger, race motorbikes, and he did that for a long time. I was born in America and he used to race out there. And then we moved to Czech Republic and he raced there. So I grew up around it. And then my brothers started BMX racing, so I was always dragged down to the track. And I was so sick of watching that I decided to race. And so I think it was my second year of racing. I was going to nationals and making the top final, which is the top 8. And then I think after 2 years of racing, I was getting podiums at nationals, something like that. Very, very competitive. I like to win. And so after I was cycling, I started rowing at 16 at sixth form. And then not last year, the year before, I went to the Indoor World Championships for that and got podium in 2 events there as well.
So in terms of this competitive instinct, do you think that having brothers has helped you to develop that?
Yeah, absolutely. Both my brothers are older than me and they're very good at things. One of them still lives in the UK now and he's 4 years older than me. And he is so hardworking and really a massive role model to me. And it was really nice to go in the scary moments when I didn't want to worry my boyfriend or my parents. I would call my brother and I would go, don't want to worry anyone else, but I can worry you. I've just seen an orca and I'm quite scared. And it was really nice to be able to have that because they've only ever been happy for what I want, but I want to make them proud, They're my brothers.
And what did they say when then you were able to finally say that you rowed across an ocean?
I haven't actually managed to see them yet. I'm seeing one of them in a few weeks, which will be really nice. And we're going to celebrate and drink a lot of champagne and eat a lot of cake together, which will be nice.
And no doubt they'll be setting a bigger challenge for themselves then to outdo you on that one that you've just accomplished.
I'm sure.
So having then made the decision that you're going to row across the ocean, how do you go from that to making it happen?
I had absolutely no idea. I called somebody at Team Forces, complete cold call. I called Lamont Kirkland, the CEO, and went, hi, I'd like to row across the Atlantic in a few months, but I've got no money or experience. Do you think you could help me a lot? And he said yes. And he invited me to talk at events where I could hopefully get some interest in sponsorship because you can't start without any money. It was a very expensive crossing to do. And I called him at the end of April, beginning of May. And then I left in October. So I needed to buy a boat, pay for training, pay for everything, food. And they helped me out with all of my admin as well. They put me in contact with coaches at Rannoch who then did this intensive thing with me. And I would have absolutely never been able to do any of it by myself.
And so your connection with Team Forces, did that come because you were joining officer training in September? Is that right?
Yes, I've been on a military contract since I was 15. So I went to a special sixth form that's now closed down, but that was military sponsored. And then I had to go to university and do a technical degree. We could either do maths, physics or engineering, and I chose physics. And so technically now I'm a reserve, but then when I finish education and then go to Sandhurst, I'll be a regular.
Wonderful. So that phone call really helped you out then in having some support for your quest.
Absolutely. I would never have been able to even start properly planning it without that.
Now, in that time where you're having to fundraise and seek sponsors and so on, I heard you do an interview, I think it was with Laura Kenny as well, the cyclist, and you seemed a little bit in awe, given that they had had their success and you were yet to have your rowing success. So there's something to me about self-belief when you're seeking sponsorship, when you're having to convince others that you are the person that can do this. How do you manage your sense of self-belief and your mind in those moments?
That's a very good question. I just thought that there was no reason that I couldn't do it. I knew that I had a lot to learn. I still now, even though I have successfully rowed an ocean, I still will not call myself an ocean rower because I'm not one. I had a lot of help from people who are, and I couldn't have done it without that. I texted my coach every single day, and he texted me to make sure that I was still all right. He told me exactly where I should be going every day. And then because of the training that I had, I knew how to do that. Or I could reply and say, can't do that today. I'm going to try something else. So I think it's about believing that you're capable, but not having a kind of arrogance to you where you think that you're the best at everything and that you can do one thing once doesn't make you an expert at all.
So once you then got into the boat and you left from Portugal, describe to us what it was like in the boat and the size of the boat and what were those first few days like?
The first few days were awful. I hadn't settled into it and I had the same kind of mindset that I had in training, which was quite a negative one because this is the first sport that I've done that you can't control that many factors of it. I obviously had the weather and the weather was against me for 35 out of the first 39 days. That wasn't supposed to happen. And the first time I started going backwards was on day 5. And I had the same mindset in training that I'm not strong enough, I shouldn't have gone. I somehow managed to trick everyone into thinking I was ready when I wasn't. And I thought I'm in for a really miserable few months. And then day 6 came, and for the first time in my life, I saw a fish. And that was the first time that I realised that it was a lot more about the journey than where I was going. Because if I wanted to get there quickly, I would fly. And after day 6, I enjoyed every single day. But my boat is 25 feet long. And when it was full, it was about 800 kilos. And then when I finished, it was about 600. And routine for that first month was rowing over 17, probably 17 to 19 hours a day on average. There were some days where I was doing 21, 22 hours just because of the weather. But then after that, I settled into a routine of rowing 16 and a half hours.
Just reflecting, Mick Dawson, one of our previous guests who rowed across the Pacific, he rowed 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 2 hours on, 2 hours off. What was your routine in that long day of rowing?
I woke up before midnight. I was ready to row at midnight, so rowing from 12 until 3, and then I would sleep 3 till 6, and then I would row 6 till midday, rest midday till 1:30, row 1:30 till 9 p.m, sleep 9 p.m. till midnight.
So you had that routine then?
Yeah. And that was what worked for me. I could have probably have done with a little bit more sleep. I was getting about 5 hours, but those 5 hours were split into 3 chunks. But looking back, I could manage that for 3 months. Now that I'm back, though, I am sleeping a lot. I've been back, I think, about a week, and I'm eating and sleeping more than I have ever.
Yes, I imagine it's a wonderful thing to enjoy when you get an opportunity to have more of it. Now, you talked about just time there, and given that you're rowing across some time zones, when you say midnight, are you on UTC time, or what's the time zone you're actually navigating by?
Yeah, I stayed on UTC the entire time because that's what my coaches were on. Some of my safety equipment would change depending on where I was and would go automatically, but that would have just confused me and confused everybody. So I just stayed on UTC, which actually meant that when I got into French Guiana, I got told I had a call it. They meant French Guiana time, which is 9 a.m. in the UK. So I woke everybody up at 3 a.m. saying, I'm ready. Nobody was very happy with me.
Well, it does go to show, I think, that time becomes immaterial when you're on a journey like that, I imagine.
Absolutely. And being out like that, it was nice to just go to sleep when the sun was going down. It was just nice to just be in nature, and because you do really sink into the routine, so you become tired at these times that you're resting anyway. And I made sure that I always saw the sunrise and sunset, and it was really nice.
Sometimes the most comfortable mode for rowing is naked. Is that what worked for you?
Yeah, I didn't even wear shoes.
And did you have a sheepskin seat? Sometimes people have a special covering of their seat that you didn't get in terms of your seat.
No, I did have a comfortable seat on board, and I'm not used to it because I'm a normal rower. I'm used to the hard one. So I had the hard one with no seat pad the entire time. I didn't wear anything on my hands. My hands are used to it. My body's used to it. And it was comfortable for me, but not most people.
So did you see anybody on the journey at all?
I had one sailboat come up with a German couple on board, and they just spoke to me on the radio and said, we know what you're doing. Can we come over and take a picture? And that was on about day 70, I think. And I hadn't seen anybody in so long. And it actually made me really emotional because I was like, oh my goodness, you kind of forget. They were never close enough for me to actually see them, but that was really nice. And then I also had one ship who didn't even see me at night time, or who missed me by 0.1 of a mile. They didn't reply on radio. They didn't clearly weren't checking their AIS. They didn't see my flare, and there was nothing I could do to get out the way quicker because I'm in a rowing boat. So I did message my coach the word ship, just in case I got hit, you'd know what would happen. And I messaged my boyfriend as well, said I love you, just in case. And that was awful. But then they thankfully did miss me.
You must have had your heart in your mouth at that moment, I imagine.
Yeah, I didn't really have time for that because it happened really quickly and I did everything that I could do. I wasn't ever going to leave the boat because that would be absolutely ridiculous. That is just dead. And then after it left and it missed me, I then was able to just go like, which was a nice feeling to have. But you should always be checking your systems and everything like that. So they must have had everything turned off, which is really bad.
And if you're enjoying this episode with Zara, then I also recommend episode 56, where my guest was Mick Dawson, who was part of a team of 2 that were first to row across the North Pacific Ocean, from Japan to San Francisco. You can now find more than 140 episodes, ranging from business and sports to the arts and social change. Just hop on over to our website at accesstoinspiration.org to discover them all there, and we've categorised them to make it easy for you to find your favourite. Now back to Zara. So in all of those days, given that there were no humans in contact with you, apart from those that you've just mentioned, what about the fish beneath the sea? How did you engage with that?
I loved it. I thought that it was the coolest thing ever to see fish. And the dolphins as well. I swam with dolphins and I had whales. I had some sharks come quite close. I was never in danger of it, but it was nice. And the birds aren't really scared of people because they don't see many. So they would come and sit on the boat and get really close to you. Flying fish hit you in the face when it was dark. That was really funny. And also I had an octopus attached to my power anchor at one point, and it was very heavy, and I was trying to carry it and pull it in without realizing I was pulling an octopus in. So lots of funny problems that I had that were absolutely completely foreign to me before I left. But actually, in my last week, I was bitten.
Really?
Yeah, I got in the water every single day for probably the last 35, 40 days because I loved it. And well, I didn't like it at the beginning, but I came to love it. And it was very hot. And I was dangling my legs over the edge of the boat like I did every other day to put on my goggles and my gloves. And then something bit me. Not super badly. I have all my toes still, but I did go for a run yesterday and it did start bleeding again. And we think it was a barracuda.
Wow. That's a little scary. Did you never feel nervous that once you got into the water that you wouldn't be able to get back into the boat?
You're always attached. You have a 3-meter piece of line. I didn't like going in the water initially because I didn't like getting my face wet. I didn't like holding my breath underwater. And when you have to actually be under the boat physically, it was quite a scary thing. But I always knew that I would be able to get back onto the boat.
Now, did the boat ever capsize? I think you had one scary moment.
I had one capsize the entire time. And it wasn't even in the biggest weather that I had. It was just in the most annoying sideways weather. And the boat just rolled. I was upside down and then it flipped back around again. Because if you pack your boat properly, the boats that I'm in, I was in Iranic, they do just come back around, which is amazing. And the only thing that broke was my flagpole. So that's pretty good.
You did mention earlier your phone had broken. So given that that was part of the way you could be listening to music and so on, how did you feel at that moment when you realised it then was no longer working?
Fine. I didn't really listen to too much music before then anyway. I was more worried that I wouldn't ever be able to get it fixed because it had all of my photos on it because I actually didn't back up my phone before I left, which was really stupid. And I didn't want to break it more, so I just didn't use it. Turns out it wasn't actually even that broken. But it was really lovely to not have any kind of distraction and to just be fully in nature. Even though it was for almost 60 days, it was really, honestly, really enjoyable.
And did those fish and birds and so on become creatures that you spoke to?
Oh, yeah, but, I speak to them before I lost my phone too. I think I've always been a person that's quite away with the fairies, and I think going away by myself like that and also not having anything to listen to just made me a little bit more spaced out. But I had a great time. So I had a lot more hallucinations than I think most solo rowers have because I didn't have that kind of brain stimulation. But all of my hallucinations were really pleasant, so it was fine.
You're making it sound like it's just the norm for people to have these experiences, Zara. And given you've spent so many days alone, then it is the norm for you now, of course. How about food then? You've got to sustain yourself. How do you manage to have enough calories to row all these hours per day?
I lost 10 kilos. I left at 64. I'm 5'9". And I didn't actually have very much fat on me before I left because I did a really bad job of bulking up before. And I've lost a lot of muscle now. I was meant to have 90 days food pack things that were, I think, meant to be 5,000, 4,000 calories a day. I didn't finish a single pack of food. So I was meant to have 90 days, which meant I would have had 7 days of no food, and I still didn't run out. I still could have gone a few more weeks. I found it so difficult to eat while rowing, and I knew that was going to be hard for me the entire time. I thankfully did eat enough to be okay. I was never eating a dangerously little amount, but I could have done it with a lot more food.
So the food sustained you physically. How did you sustain yourself mentally?
I brought nail polish with me. It's good advice for someone doing something like this to have one thing that isn't rowing that you can do. Some people make coffee every day and do it actually nicely. Some people write a blog. And I'm not really that motivated by food. And I don't like writing. And so I thought the thing that would make me feel quite human is painting my nails, because I always have my nails painted. And it takes like 2 minutes a week. And it was really nice to have because it made me feel normal. And I always paint my nails for myself. So some people have asked me, but no one's there. It's like, yeah, but I never do it for anybody else anyway. So it was nice. I had that. And on the days I painted my nails, even though they chipped instantly, I always felt much better.
It's amazing how a small activity like that can have such a big impact on morale.
Absolutely, especially when you don't have anything else. I didn't have any personal items with me. It was the only thing that I did that wasn't productive, and it was really important.
Yes, you reminded me of my North Pole expedition where I had some face cream and a little bit of moisturiser and a little mirror to look in. All the men in the expedition team laughed at me, but after a few days, they all wanted to look in the mirror and borrow the face cream too. So sometimes those small things can make a big difference.
Absolutely.
As you got closer to land, could you smell land before you could see it?
Yeah, I thought that was a really odd thing that everybody was telling me would happen, but I could smell it from quite far away. And also, French Guiana is quite flat, so I only saw it when I was about 5 miles offshore. And it didn't hit me that I'd seen land. I thought, like, oh, that's cool. I didn't think I'd been alone for almost 100 days and this big thing that I've been working towards was nearly over. Because the thing that was mostly on my mind when I was coming into land was the fact that only one other person's done this crossing before. It was in 2002, it was before I was born. He was a man and he holds the speed record. He was the only other person that's done it. And I missed out on taking that off him by 19 hours. And so all I could do when I was coming in, I didn't see it as an achievement because all I was thinking was, over the past 3 months, which days could I have tried a little bit harder on? Which days could I have done something slightly differently? I knew I made the wrong call sometimes. So when I was going through the Canaries, I chose to go the west side of Gran Canaria and I probably should have gone the east and things like that. And I was thinking about it and thinking if I'd left a week earlier in my weather window, would it have been easier? Would it have cut off time? And it was awful because I just finished this thing that I'd been all consumed by for almost 100 days. And I just felt like I hadn't actually done anything. And thankfully now I can look at it a little bit more rationally and think, well, I couldn't do it. That's fine.
I wonder if it was that competitive instinct of yours coming into play there.
Absolutely. I was never setting out for the speed record, but I knew I was going to be close to it. And I got told about it about 3 weeks out. And I knew I might be able to get it. And I pushed for it and I didn't get it.
So how did it feel then eventually setting foot on land in French Guiana?
It didn't hit me for ages. It was just, my parents actually came out, which was a surprise, which was nice. And I saw them and went, oh, hi, how was your flight? It took me a while for it to sink in that what I'd done. And it was actually until somebody said to me, what would you 10 years ago have thought about what you've just done? Because I know 11-year-old me would think it was pretty cool. And somebody asked me that and I started to cry and I said, oh my goodness. So now I feel happy that I've done it. But at the time I was just like, yeah, it was fun. It was good.
And what did your parents say to you when they saw you?
Well done, I think. I can't remember. They were both very happy to see me, but my mum cried when I told her I was leaving and she cried when I came back. So one was because she was scared and one because she was so relieved.
That's what parents do, isn't it?
Absolutely.
When they care about their children. So I also know that when you got to French Guiana, you needed to buy some clothes to get yourself back home in a decent state.
I did. So it was actually the first thing that I did after I got off the boat. I'd sorted out all my kit on the boat. But before I went to the hotel and showered, had some food, anything like that, I went to a clothes shop and bought some trousers and other things and a jumper because the only thing that I had to get on the flight on was shorts and wellies. And I didn't fancy getting on a long flight like that. And I got some human clothes so that I could look a little bit more presentable and like I'd not been on a boat for 3 months because my boyfriend did pick me up from the airport and I wanted to look quite nice.
And no doubt had painted nails as well.
Yeah, I think I did pink.
Wonderful. So now that you're 10 days on after that amazing journey, Zara, what do you reflect about it now, given the opportunity to be a little bit distanced from it?
Oh, it was incredible. I missed the water. I missed it that first day I wasn't on it. I love being back. I love being back with the people that I missed and being able to move my body in ways that I couldn't on the boat. But it was lovely to just be removed from it all and to have that just absolute peace because I didn't have very strong winds. The trade winds didn't establish until I was in my 13th week. And it meant that the waters were really flat and calm and it was just lovely. And so I miss it a lot. I'm very thankful I got to go. I'm very thankful to everybody that helped me. And now that I am back, I am trying to give back as much as possible. I'm going to try and do as much work with Team Forces as I can to help somebody else do something like this because it was the coolest thing ever.
And if one of our listeners was hearing your story today, Zara, and thinking, oh, I've got a dream, I'd love to do something, what would be your advice to them?
Yeah, do it. There's always going to be a reason why you can't do it, and there's always going to be a reason why you think it's not a good idea, and you can sit in an hour and talk yourself out of anything. But if you actually want to do it, there are people out there who can help. And even if you're scared, you should definitely go because you might actually enjoy it.
You never know what's possible is really what you're saying there, isn't it? How one can surprise oneself in terms of what can be achieved.
Oh, yeah, and 9 times out of 10, you'll be stronger than you think you are.
So what was your reception like when you got back to university?
I actually don't talk about the row in my life. So unless people knew about it before I left, they don't know about it now. I just say I was away. I did a lot of rowing and I was away, but I'm back now. so they don't know. But we have a celebration tomorrow with Team Forces and my sponsors, and that will be good fun to be able to thank all of them. But I got back to England, and then 2 days later, I was back at university in lectures, just like normal.
So what's the next dream then? What's the next ambition?
I'm not sure. I would like to do something, but we're not sure what yet. I like the water, I like rowing, but maybe something like sailing or maybe something completely different like what you did. But I know that when I do decide to do something else, Team Forces will be there and help me out in whatever way they can. But I don't know. I'll graduate this summer and then I'll go off to Sandhurst in September. That's a year long, 11 months. And so I'll see what I'm interested in when I'm older.
And finally, Zara, in what way do you think this experience is going to help you when you go to Sandhurst and do that officer training? How might it have helped you?
It's made me much kinder on myself. In that first month, I had to adjust my mindset and had to be able to think that some days I'm going to push, I'm going to put all of my effort in, and it is not going to be enough to get the goal that I want. And sometimes that's okay. And that was such a difficult thing for me to learn because I've always been like, no, you aren't strong enough, you're not good enough. And it's just made it easier to actually push myself. And I would set more challenging targets because I wouldn't beat myself up as much when I couldn't get them. And I think it made me do a lot better because of it, because I had this push target to get to and I wasn't scared of not getting it. And it just made my mind a much nicer place to be in. So I hope that sticks around as while I'm at Sandhurst. If not, I might have to take a few months out and sabbatical and go and do another one and come back.
I love what you've said there, just about it makes your mind a nicer place to be in.
Yeah, it's so important though. And I always neglected that part and just pushed through it. But that's silly because you spend all your time in your mind.
I'm just eager to ask one final question and another thing and another thing. Given that it's a physical challenge and it's a mental challenge, what do you think is most important?
Oh, physically I was fine. I put a lot of effort in for years to get to the point where physically I wasn't really going to struggle. There were absolutely days where I ached and was sore, but nothing bad. I regularly would get to the point in training in normal rowing where I'm sick most days just because you're pushed so hard. And I didn't have that. I went on the water because you can't sprint for 16, 17 hours. Mentally was so difficult to wake up every single day, row for 21 hours, 5 of those hours you're at a speed of 0, and have that every day. I had that for 3 weeks was so hard. And to know that I still had 3,000 miles to go, absolutely a million times harder mentally than physically.
In those moments, what did you say to yourself?
I didn't say much to myself, actually. I can still feel that feeling. It does make me a little bit emotional now. I wouldn't have been able to get through that by myself. I wanted to give up every day. I was never serious about it, but I absolutely wanted to stop. And my boyfriend was absolutely incredible, knowing that he couldn't actually help the conditions that I was in. I'm by myself and he can't control the weather. And especially on the days where I didn't feel like I'd achieved anything, when I'd gone 11 miles or something, he was always there to remind me that I was doing a good job and that I should be proud of myself. So I actually didn't do much for myself then. So I'm very, very grateful that he was there. And also my coach as well called me on when I was having a really hard day. I was going around in circles in the Canaries for a long time, and he called me to talk about the weather, but he also wanted to just say that, it is hard and you can get there. So it was a solo thing, but it absolutely was not solo.
I think what you're reminding me of is the power of encouragement that any of us can give to somebody else when maybe they're struggling or having a bad day. Sometimes just a few words of encouragement can be so powerful, whether they're out in the middle of the ocean or not.
Yeah, I think it means a lot more than you can realise as well. I never wanted to let on, especially to my coach, how much what he would say meant to me. I told him very early on, day 10 or something, that I hated going to para anchor, which is your sea anchor, because it feels like giving up. because you only put it out when you're losing too much ground and you need to slow yourself down. And it doesn't stop you completely, but it slows it down. And just feeling like I was giving up every time I needed to rest was so difficult. And he would literally just say one line back, it's hard, you're going to have to do it sometimes. I had to do it for 5 days or whatever he said. And it meant so much to me. And I do need to properly thank him for that.
Well, it just goes to show that, as you say, it's a team effort. You're doing the work. There's a great support team around you that have helped you to get there. Your sponsors, your family, your friends, no doubt as well. It's an amazing accomplishment, Zara. I think you're such a fantastic role model for young people today and older people like myself to be inspired by. And it's been really wonderful to hear your story firsthand. If people do want to find out more about you and perhaps what you're doing in the future, how can they do that on social media?
I am on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Zara Lachlan. And then there's also an Instagram, Atlantic Solo Zara.
Fantastic. Well, I wish you well in your continuing studies and no doubt that party tomorrow night with your sponsors and a bit of a celebration and whatever the next adventure that holds for you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you for having me.
What an incredible conversation with Zara Lachlan. Her journey is a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest barriers that we face are the ones in our minds, and that courage, determination, and a little bit of adventure can take us further than we ever imagined. If you've been inspired by today's episode, then don't forget to share it with someone who might need a little extra motivation. And if you want to follow Zara's next big adventure, then you can find her on Instagram at Atlantic Solo Zara. I'll be back again in 2 weeks' time with another inspiring guest. And meanwhile, you can keep connected with us on social media. Just search for Access to Inspiration. I look forward to connecting with you again soon.